everybody. This is Danny Zelisko, concert promoter from the Southwest United States. And Tim Richards, the radio man who I admire the most in the Phoenix market, and I have gotten together to put together a podcast of our thoughts on what's going on in the business today, the music business that is. And we want to bring our connections together to you to interview and have good conversations with and find out things about your favorite artists that you didn't know before. And perhaps we could even turn you on to some new people as we go. So this is the ALL EXCE podcast. We're going to be featuring a lot of people that are in my new book called ALL EXCE and people who aren't in the book that wanted to be in the book. Tim, take it away.
So for those of you that know Danny, you love him. For those of you who don't know Danny, if you knew him, you'd love him, but you'll get to know him through this podcast. Danny is, the most successful concert promoter in the Southwest and is Arizona based. And I've done radio here in Arizona on and off for more than a quarter of a century. And Danny has been promoting concerts in the Southwest and around the country for, can I say, Danny?
Yeah.
40 plus years. So
I got to own that.
So, and by the way, here's the thing about Danny. He's a great storyteller. He knows everybody. And we're going to go through his Rolodex and talk to a lot of his amazing friends. We're also going to dive into the music business and talk to some people that you don't normally see. It could be a production person who makes all of the magic happen behind the scenes. It could be somebody on the record label side who is behind the scenes making the music or helping you to hear the music that comes out on Spotify or on the radio or wherever. So the goal for this podcast is just to connect you with the music business, and as we grow, we'll get you more connected to the people that we know, and hopefully you'll learn something and we'll have fun together.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Hey, it's the 1-2 punch.
So this is our first show for you today. And in this show, we're going to give you some glimpses into what we'll be doing in the future. We'll do some snippets of some of the interviews that we've already got in the can. And then we'll run the entire interviews for your pleasure later on. But pay attention. March 15th is going to be the first show on the air, and we hope you'll be there with us.
Come and see us March 15th right here.
dzplive.com.
Hang on, I got to find it. There it is. There, now we're pointing.
We're back down to earth. I was reading some articles on you recently, and not spying or anything, but it's always fun to catch up with friends on what people are writing about them. And there was one article I saw where you talked about getting visited in your sleep by your friends, and I have that happen a lot too. And one of the things that you talked about was about how music will come to you in your sleep. So do you wake up and write something down, or does it wait for you till the morning?
No, it's gone by morning. You have to.
So you gotta get up and do it right there, right?
I gotta, say something to, fortunately, technology, servant of man, steps in and says, here's your iPhone, pick it up, hit record, and put that down, and now you can go back to sleep.
All right. So not to get technical, but say prior to 1987 or 8, what happens if that happens in the middle of the night? You can't talk into an iPhone. Do you get up and learn the song right there?
Yeah.
And of those things, I mean, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I'm really curious. All right, how about this? What was the most off chance that you can think of? I don't want you to think too hard on it because it's just a question. What came to you, like as a nuance or a hint or something fun that just where you went to bing, 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 boom, song? Does that ever happen?
Oh yeah, on occasion. I wrote a song way back when called Josephine. The words, the music, everything arrived all at once, all at the same time. I think it's one of my better songs. It's not real famous, and it was never part of the Grateful Dead canon. But it was. I wrote, I guess, for Bobby and the Midnights. I think way back when. But like I say, it all arrived at once. Another one that arrived pretty much all at once. I was working with John Barlow at the time, and we just sat in his kitchen, and actually in his mom's kitchen, and in our skivvies, and wrote this. What was it? It's called "Let It Grow." The second part of what I ended up calling the Weather Report Suite.
It's Danny, it's Tim, and we are here with an incredible legend, Alan Parsons, 13 Grammy nominations, Grammy win, engineer, producer, artist. I mean, you look at a guy in the music business that's checked every box, and Alan, you are that guy. So we are so honored to have you join us today. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure, really. Thank you.
On the engineering side, just one geek question. Dark Side of the Moon, Money, and that loop at the beginning. How did you do that when there was no Pro Tools? What did you guys do to create that?
Incredibly primitive technology, actually. I mean, it was just literally a 4-track tape cut into individual slices, stuck together with sticky tape, going around in a continuous loop around the heads of a tape machine with mic stands supporting the loop. The difficulty was getting it to sound rhythmically correct. And we discovered that the only way to do that was physically measure each sound, each length of tape, then cut it, whatever it was, 6 7/8 inches or something. And each of those sounds had to be exactly 6 7/8, otherwise it didn't sound right.
Well, that sound was iconic.
Pro Tools, if we'd had DAWs back then, it would have taken 15 minutes to put it together. It took.
Yeah.
It took.
And how long did it take?
At least all day, probably. But the interesting thing is they actually played to that loop. That was effectively their click track to play to.
Well, I was just going to say, it's like it constantly comes up with, today's modern effects that you can use versus what you had to do to come up with that sound that you had in your head, and then how to get that out back then. And, we were just saying the 90s wasn't that long ago. This was only 20 years ago before that, to put it in perspective. I mean, it's almost 50 years ago. And it sounds like, if you put it on right now, it sounds like whatever technical advantage you might have had back then, it was at your disposal, and it really wasn't. I mean, I can't believe some of the things I've seen in studios.
Everything was tape back then. You just made effects with tape. Somehow you would have, loops. You would have delays before you hit the echo chamber or reverb unit. You would have tape echo, which is the sort of recycling echo thing. All those effects. There were no digital boxes that magically produced these.
Did you have?
Yeah, that's what makes it so impressive.
Was the feeling in the studio during the time that you guys were recording? I mean, as you got it going and you got past basic tracks and whatever order you added more instruments and vocals on it, at what point did you guys feel like you had something above and beyond a typical Pink Floyd record? And there's nothing typical about the previous Floyd records. I mean, Uma Guma was a piece of work in metal and Obscured by Clouds and even the More soundtrack.
You missed out the one I worked on, which is the cow one.
Oh, Adam Hart Mother by, I mean, one of the greatest rock symphonies ever made. And, you know, I've played that for people who aren't super Pink Floyd savvy. Nobody ever gets that that's Pink Floyd. You know, I mean, the songs on the other side, of course, you know, sound like Pink Floyd, but Adam Hart Mother, until you get to Gilmour's guitar playing in there, it's very difficult to tell what it is. But all those records were so fantastic. But this record, Dark Side, I saw it when they first came to America and played it live about a year before it came out. And I don't even know if recording had started yet. It was April of '72. I think they probably started recording later than that.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
I mean, it was released '73, right? So,
Right. I have a tape of a show from Chicago in '72. I've never played it for you. I got to get you a copy of that. It's absolutely sensational. It's all their music, no chick singers, no effects, and no saxophones. 4 guys playing that album and just working out the bugs. And one of my all-time favorite recordings of anything anywhere. And it's as crude as it could be.
Would have been billed as Eclipse back then, right?
Correct. While we're on the subject of the Beatles, you recorded at Abbey Road.
Right.
So how did that come about, other than the fact that you're a massive Beatles fan?
I was on tour in Europe in the summer of that year, which I guess now is about, 9 years ago, 10 years ago. So I said to myself, after 3 songs, I have to finish it in New York. It's, London was out of control, expensive. Abbey Road was beyond anything, soundtracks can afford it, but there's no artists recording records there anymore.
But by the way, just to interject, 3 days at Abbey Road, what was the tab?
It was outrageous. I don't remember, because here's what happened.
You blocked it out of your mind. It was that high. You can't count that high.
No, I went to the best studio in New York. Also, I tried recording the rest of my studio, and it wasn't measuring up the sound, right? So I rented a house in a place I've always wanted to go, the Hamptons. So the guy goes, you got to be kind of cool. I don't normally rent my house, but you sound like a nice guy. He didn't know who I was. So he goes, because your next door neighbor is kind of a famous rock guy. I said, what? Really? I said, well, and I'm thinking John Bon Jovi. I'm thinking
Billy Joel.
Maybe Billy Joel. That would be cool. I know
Roger.
Well, I didn't know Roger was out there. So when he said Paul McCartney, I a few tears came down, because it was like, this is what I've always wanted to meet Paul. I mean, that, and here I am in the middle of a Beatle tribute album at Abbey Road, and I'm going out there to arrange those songs, and he's right next door. That can't be.
Before we go to Mo Bay, I'm going to ask you guys, both Nigel and Mick. So Mick first. Give me like the best part about working with Pink Floyd.
The fact that in when I was 20 years old, a friend of mine took me to a Pink Floyd concert at Birmingham Town Hall. They did Atom Heart Mother, which was an amazing, I still think one of the greatest albums they ever did. Not the greatest recording, but it really was an amazing set of music. And I remember, this is before I was in the business, and I remember sitting there thinking, God, if ever I worked in the music business, that's what I want to do, production. Look at that. The lights were just awesome. The sound, everything about them. I still get goosebumps thinking about that one show. And then in March of 81, I'm under the stage. I get an electric shock for one of the transformers that were completely left wide open. There was no covering on them. And as I did, I came up and banged my head on the stage, and it was the epiphany. Oh my God, I'm working for Pink Floyd.
The dream you had at 20.
The dream I had was now a reality. Even though my head was a little sore, it was like, wow. That was it. That was my moment in life. That was the greatest production I've ever worked on. Done some amazing shit, but really, that was it. You can't go any better than that. And having a drink with David Gilmour in the bar.
Well, I was telling Danny that I've seen a lot of shows in my time as well. Hundreds and hundreds of shows, maybe thousands. And the best show I've ever seen was the last time Danny brought Roger Waters in to Glendale. That I just blown away, speechless. So I feel you viscerally.
Well, that wall tour was a replica of what we did all these years ago in 1981.
So
1981.
You'll all be happy to know that while we're doing this, Roger called on my cell phone. I had to go, piss off. I'll call you when we're done.
Oh my God, Daddy, that's perfect.
Please send him our best. So Nigel, I mean, Van Halen, AC/DC, I mean, Billy Squier, just like a couple of highlights from those times, memories that stick out there. Like, I can't believe I saw that or did that.
I think probably when it was happening, you don't realize what you're involved with, the size.
Yep.
Because you're in such a cocoon.
Yeah, but Nige, back then, as you were starting that, Van Halen then wasn't the iconic Van Halen that they are now. They were becoming that. They were setting the steps and the stage for becoming like this huge band in history. But in 1984, they were a relatively new band. They were a big arena band and everything, but it had really just started a couple of years before that.
Right. But at the end of the tour, and you sat back outside of the bubble and you kind of looked in, you realized what a monster that band was. I mean, you had everything you could possibly want in the 80s for a rock band. You had a good-looking singer, the long flowing hair, who was just a front man for every girl's dream. Let's face it, and every guy too, probably. And then you had Eddie, who was just a monster on the guitar. You had Michael, who's probably one of the most down-to-earth pop stars you've ever met in your life. The nicest guy. And actually, talking about Michael, he had an endorsement with I can't remember. A hard liquor company, and I can't remember.
Daniels. He had the Jack Daniels face. Yeah.
So he had a guitar made like a Jack Daniels bottle. And I think we were in Montreal, and it got delivered, and he was just, oh my God, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen in all my life. So his guitar tech strung it, tuned it, showtime. Lights go down, Michael comes on, Dave comes on, the whole thing gets going. And at the end of the first song, I hear Michael at the top of his voice go, "You motherfucker." Somebody very close to the front had flipped a quarter, and it had hit his guitar and took a chunk out of the guitar. Oh, he was absolutely beyond livid, because he thought this was the greatest thing that ever happened to him. So at the end of the show, he was just ranting and raving.
Well, that bass is probably not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but it may be at some point. And if you get out to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and you see it and you see the chunk, Nigel just told you the story of how it happened. Now you know.
You know, one of the greatest things I'd like to do, and I'd like to do this with Mickey too, is when the time comes and we're probably too old to come home at 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning from doing shows.
I'll see you tomorrow, Nigel.
Is actually go round to high schools or colleges, because nobody can go into a high school and explain to students what the music business is about.
Yeah.
It needs somebody to have grown up in it and to go back on a weekly basis and tell these stories and how you can get in the business. And there's so many different facets of this business. And I think
we can bill ourselves as the three frickin' Stooges.
we could do Mr. Norfolk and Mr. Good. That's Mr. Norfolk and I'm Mr. Good. We can go out and call ourselves Norfolk and Good. But I think it's something the kids would really digest. I think they'd really enjoy it.
No, what you guys have been witness to history. You have made history. You've created history.
You know, we without
yeah,
we really have. I mean, we were on the front line all the way through. And while it was happening, you don't realize while it was happening. Now you look back on it and go, you know what? We were top of the tree while that was all happening.
Like they used to say in Babe, not bad, pig. Well done.
Thanks, poodle lips.
Just to add to that, I was on a conference call on one of these sites that have grown up now, and they were asking the question: are we ever going to see it on the Beatles, Rolling Stones, Pink Floyd? Yes. And there was a lot of very young people on there all going, yes, it's going to be this, it's going to be that. And I got sad news for them, because all of that happened in an era of something that grew like a plant out of a pot. And eventually that plant is going to die. There's going to be something to replace it. But we used to, if you lived in England, you listened to the BBC. I mean, there's a whole history of not having enough entertainment as we grew up. And, we radio was so bad in England, we had pirate ships on the coast called Radio Carolina, Radio London, and we tuned into them. And they played the great Luxembourg. They played the greatest music. Yeah. It's not that. Right now, if I could live to be 500 years old, I couldn't listen to every piece of music that lives on this planet.
No, you couldn't.
It's hard to even turn on music now and pick something that you want to hear. It usually goes back to something we grew up with rather than something that's new.
We can tie in with both of you, because what you guys have in common right now is that you're both officially authors and you've written books. So, Brian, talk about Son of a Milkman a little bit for us.
Love the title.
Son of the Milkman is my memoirs of my life, basically. And Son of the Milkman, the title is because I am the illegitimate son of the milkman.
That's amazing.
And, it was always a joke, right? And, look, I was born in 1962. It was kind of a taboo subject if you were like a kid that was born out of, wedlock. And I always kind of just took it with a grain of salt and like comedy, It's like, well, hey, everyone has shit in their lives that comes up.
Yes, we do.
We all have skeletons and we all carry a lot of baggage. Let's just be honest, right? I don't care who you are. And so when it got to time of me putting out this book and thinking of a title, I just went, Son of a Milkman, because I am the son of a milkman.
That's awesome. It is one of the best titles I have ever heard.
Yeah, I laugh every time someone asks me about it.
That's awesome.
I think it's great.
And the funny thing about it is while my dad, the milkman, was over like hitting on my mom and stuff, my brothers were out robbing his milk truck.
That's the best.
And milk and shit. So
that's the best.
He was getting over on but actually my brothers got over on him.
So and the milkman,
you're the youngest. Go ahead.
Sorry.
The milkman always had the greatest containers of glass chocolate milk.
Absolutely.
Remember?
Oh yeah.
And it was kind of expensive. And my family, they never ordered the chocolate milk. If I said, hey, let's get one of those quarts of chocolate milk, because it was so good. And my dad would pull out the Nestle's Quick powder and go, you got chocolate milk right here. Which was good. But if
I grew up on Nestle's Quick, as well.
Something about store-bought chocolate milk.
By the time I came around, he was out. He blew the coop, and that was the end of the glass bottled milk at the Wheat House.
Bummer. He could have at least stuck around and given you your family some chocolate milk.
Well, I think he did for the few months he was around.
Okay, got it.